Hello, hello. My name is Paul, and welcome to Sunday Night Reviews. This is the time where I review the things I've read during the week and let you guys know like what I'm reading this coming week, and also maybe talk about some genre news, genre things, maybe look up to see what books are being released, things like that. Hey Robert, good to see you. If you read anything this week, put it in chat. If you have any comments, put that in chat as well. All right. Thanks for joining me. Appreciate it. Let's see. Can I add? Nope. All right. So tonight I'm going to talk about the short fiction that I read this week first. During the last week, I read fantasy and science fiction, the July and August issue. Hello, Landon. Nice to have you tonight. Thanks for joining. We got Robert and Landon in the chat. If you guys read anything this week, or if you have any comments, just throw them in there and I'll shout them out. So yeah, I read Fantasy and Science Fiction magazine this week, and it was a very middle of the road magazine. However, with every short fiction magazine or collection or anthology, there's always one or two stories that are really good. So, as a whole, it's like a 3-star rating for me, but there's some great stories in here. So the one that I liked the most was from Amy Ogden. Amy Ogden has a new novella from Tor.com that she's been talked about quite a bit. But this one is called A Half-Remembered World, and it is also a novella. Okay? It's about this woman named Milu, and Milu works and lives on top of this giant crab. And this giant crab, its name is Drahim, and they believe that the giant crab is a god. Now, her crab, Drahim, is getting old, and they have to do like population control on the crab. And the people living on that crab can't have more than a certain amount of kids. So Milu actually had a kid, and she had to give her kid up to another god crab, giant god crab. And so her daughter had to go and live somewhere else. And the population is controlled by these people called deacons. They're like the spiritual leaders on top of this crab, and they're very concerned about the future of what's going to happen. And then there are actually people that live underneath the crab that are a totally different society and who they believe are kind of like hurting the god. It's very interesting. So Melu, she climbs down the crab's legs to get barnacles for food. At one time when she's out there with her partner Geth, she is thrown off the leg by her partner, and they believe her to be dead. But she lands in the water, and she gets saved by one of these under the crab people, and she finds out that they're basically the same as her. And I really like this novella. There are definitely parts of it that I really enjoyed because of the imagination that Ogden was creating with these giant god creatures that people lived on. Melu also has like a relationship with a non-binary individual called Empri, and they are the healer of the crab. And the story goes into a way where they go and the crab goes on land and it finally dies. And now they have to figure out what they're going to do with their life. It's very good. I really enjoyed it. So Robert says that he finished Scythe by Neil Shusterman. Yep. And that he is currently reading I Am Not a Serial Killer by Dan Wells. I've wanted to read both of those books. I think they both do sound interesting. Very cool. All right, so also in this issue, we have a Peter S. Beagle story that I liked. It's a novelette. It's called A Very Nasty Aquarium. And this is a novelette from the viewpoint of an elderly woman who buys a cursed wooden pirate for her aquarium. The pirate's malevolence actually impacts like the toy diver and the toy mermaid and the underwater castle that's in the aquarium. So we kind of come to believe that like all these things in the aquarium are alive, but this pirate is causing chaos. Basically, it's evil. So she goes and gets help from her elderly friend to stop the pirate because they can't actually take the pirate out of the aquarium. So it's a really fun and funny story about two elderly women. And I personally think that there needs to be more short fiction stories and novels from the viewpoint of the elderly because they are always so much fun. So, and then the next story I read was called Approved Methods of Love Divination in the First-Rate City of Dushkrud by Christina Ten. So this is where there is in a post-apocalyptic world. The population has decreased. There's a bunch of wars. People have basically stopped having children. So what they did is they brought back all these children games as a form of divination to learn about who their mates are going to be in the future. So like one of the divination techniques is the can of soda, when you twist the top off and you say the letter of the alphabet, whatever letter it ends on, when it comes off, that's the first letter of the person you're supposed to have love with, basically. And another one was like jump roping, where they would sing the song. Another one was those paper things where you go like this and you have to find out who loves you. A very, very fun story. But the divination practice actually revitalized this society's interest in relationships and having children. So it's very interesting. There's a story called Vanishing Point by R.J. Taylor. Explorers must get a sample from a giant alien, but as they're going towards the alien keeps getting further and further away because it's like this huge, giant alien that they have to get the sample from. And the story plays with perspective, which is very interesting. The Pet of Olodumare by Joshua Uchenna Omanga and Ojena Hueve Donald Ekpeke. It's a creation story about these deities who have this pet that allows them to have the creative juice to create this amazing world. And they kind of fight over who controls the pet and who has it. And there's a lot of backstabbing between the deities. It's a very fun story that I enjoyed. But then there was a very dark story called Serenity Prayer by Faith Marino. So a woman is being hunted in the forest by men who are brought up to believe that this is normal, that they choose a woman and they have her run through the woods and the men hunt her, and it's like kind of a rite of passage. And this story really plays with the idea of what men are to believe in culturally, and that we should really be questioning things. And the idea of boys just being boys, needs to be questioned at times, because sometimes a lot of these things are detrimental to women and society. There's a story by K.S. Walker by We Go on Faith Alone. So a bunch of birds are being attracted to this home, and they're like running into this home, and they're dying. But then later on, the people that lived in the home and around the area are attracted to this this plant, this chemical plant, basically. And it really talks about like the compulsions that drive society, and that we are victims of our own compulsions as well. So Landon said that he finished The House in the Cerulean Sea, and he also finished The Justice of the Kings this week. Fantastic, dude. Great job. And he is 100 pages into The Narrow Dark by Tad Williams and loving it. Landon reads a lot of fantasy books that I like to read as well, so I always like to hear what he is reading. So, the next story I read was called Little Bird by Jill Mcmillan. Lynette is a recluse who's trying to be more involved with her church potluck. And it's dark. It's a story about solitude and trauma and trying to make connections with people. She lived in this house where she experienced trauma, and it reminded me of the classic story about the person that their husband died in their bed and they never removed the dad or the father. I forget what that was called. Was that? Yeah, it was a very popular short story. But anyways, Little Bird was good. Next, we have Gather Me a Treasure by Jordan Chase Young. And it talks about how when we try to bring back those that have died, we have to always give something up. And there's a cycle where we give something up, and then the person we gave something up for, they give something up for us, and it's just a cycle that keeps going and going. Next, there is a story called NPC, or 8 Exploits to Maximize Your Endgame Farming, a player's guide. And I think this was from Sanders. I didn't write this one down. Let me look it up real quick. Yes, Devon Sanders from Fire Magazine, actually. And this is about a friend named Gene that takes over the character of his deceased friend in a video game, but they don't realize that this video game bridges virtual and actual reality, and that the things they do in the game impacts the world. It was interesting thoughts on friendship and also on the difference between virtual and actual reality. Okay? I'm going to go a little bit faster. A Meal for Frederick by Nick Thomas. This is about a crafted dragon who is believed to help a family through difficult times by feeding it paper meals. Feeding it paper meals. So, the dragon, the family, some of the people in the family get sick. So the dad draws these paper pieces of food and feeds it to the paper dragon, and the people end up healing themselves. They end up getting better. So he believes that there's some mystical element to feeding the paper dragon paper food. And so every time something bad happens, he does it. That's by Nick Thomas. The Day of the Sea by Jennifer Hudak. So in this one, the sea actually becomes an old woman, and this old woman visits this village. As the old woman visits the village, the sea is coming into the village. But the villagers don't want that to happen because it's going to ruin all their crops. So the villagers end up having to adapt and change their village based off of the sea now coming to their village. And the question is, what will happen when the woman leaves? It's really a look at resiliency and change. Let's see, we have a story from Dan Peacock. It's called What to Do When a Protagonist Visits Your Generic Village. So this is a really fun story about a protagonist of a story coming to a small village and all the people that protagonist interacts with and how it changes their life. From everyone from the innkeeper to the barmaid to the little boy that wants to leave the town and go on an adventure. All these people are being changed based off of this protagonist's quest. And it shows that we are all our own protagonists. We are all our own main character in our own story. And I appreciated that. Next, there's a story from Eddie D. Moore, Pedestals, Proclivities, and Perpetuities. I can't say that word very well. It's a funny story about a woman who wants her freedom from her husband, and so she ends up going on top of the roof and living a life on top of the roof. It's just a humorous, fun story. And then there are a couple of stories about giants. One was from Eddie D. Moore. It's a flash fiction piece called A Time to Sing about dwarves and a giant, and I didn't really care for it. There's a Beth Goddard story called The Giant's Dream, and it's about how someone lives inside of a giant, and they're creating art inside this giant as well. It was pretty confusing, if I'm going to be honest. Pretty confusing. All right, so let's talk about some manga. Whoops. Definitely did not mean to delete my camera. All right, let me fix this real quick. Sorry about that. Figure video. I meant to remove the picture and place the new picture up. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so I read some manga this week. We have Blue Flag number 7 and Blue Flag number 8. If you follow me on Goodreads, it's Paul_SFF. And you'll know that I've been reading Blue Flag for probably for a while now. So this is the end of the series, even though there are only 8 volumes altogether. Sorry, I didn't have enough time to put all the elements in the video before I started. Okay, so Blue Flag. There are 4 friends. It is very much a story about unrequited love and how people perceive us. There is a gay jock guy that has a crush on his best friend since childhood. And then there is also a woman who has a crush on a girl that has a crush on another girl, and they feel like they can't tell that person. So in 6 and 7, we get 7 and 8, we get the ramifications of when the main characters actually told the other people their feelings and how it's going to work out. I love this story, this series, because of the nuance that it had with relationships. And Cato, the author and artist, isn't afraid to talk about sexuality in ways that are very nuanced and brave, I would say, because especially in these two volumes, there is a character that just does not like the fact that he finds out that his friend is gay, and he lets it be known. And I mean, you could take it one of two ways. You can take it as the author writing this character in and telling us that we need to accept their viewpoint, or you can take it as, okay, the author is separating himself from the story and saying to us, okay, there is this person that thinks this way, and our characters then have to deal with this person thinking this way. I personally believe it is that second option, that second thing. He's showing that not everybody is going to be as accepting as everybody else is. And it's not really the author saying that the ideas of this character are what they believe. It's just a part of this story. But if somebody criticizes this, it'd be okay. Like, people are allowed to dislike something in a story. And the ending of this whole series, I'm not going to spoil it or anything, but it could rub some people the wrong way. But I think in the very end of this whole thing, I think what the author is trying to say is that relationships are very complicated. Relationships, our sexuality, it's not like a very easy thing to figure out, especially when you're a teenager. It takes time to develop how we feel about people and what we want in our lives. And that's what I appreciated about it, because there's not a whole lot of nuance in these type of discussions. And I actually really appreciated that. I'm glad I finished this series. It was very good. Probably one of my favorites. Highly recommend it. All right, so let's move on to the other one that I read was Chainsaw Man number 5. All right, so volume 5 of Chainsaw Man. This series, this series is at the same time extremely immature and bothersome, while being very imaginative and fascinating. The world building is really cool and I really like it, but then the characters are so immature at times. There is a 16-year-old boy as the main character, and he is woman nuts. He's girl nuts. And so there is some fan service in this, and I don't know. I like it. I'm still gonna keep reading it, but I know that it's not for everybody, you know? Okay, and then the last thing I read was yesterday. I finished a novel, and it is Ask Again, Yes, from Mary Beth Kean. And this is a general fiction novel. And it is about two families that live next door to each other. And both families, the fathers are policemen. Okay. And the son of the one family, his name is Peter, he really likes the daughter of the other family, Kate. And at this point, they're in middle school. So one night, Peter's mom, her name is Anne, who is very mentally ill. But no one really knows that because it's not really talked about too much. This is probably in the 1980s. Anne ends up shooting Kate's dad. So Kate's dad is Francis, right? And she shoots him in the face. Now she goes to the mental hospital. Francis has to do a very long recovery. And he has a lot of hatred towards Anne, the woman that shot him. And it takes him almost 4 years to feel like himself again. Peter, the son, has to leave and ends up moving in with his uncle in New York City. His uncle's name, can't think of it right now, but Peter's father, Brian, leaves Peter and like just ditches him and goes and lives down south. So, and Peter's father is an alcoholic. Now, Kate's father, Francis, the one that got shot, he ends up having an affair, and his excuse is that he lives in a sexless marriage because his wife, Lena, ends up being the caretaker because she has to help Francis with his recovery. They end up not splitting up, though. So, fast forward many, many years, and I'm basically telling the whole story. It's general fiction. Like, you're either going to read it or not. There's not, like, any twist or anything. Peter and Kate, they end up getting married. Anne, Peter's mom, this is in the future, is watching Peter grow up and get married and have children. She is now mentally stable. Peter and Kate have 2 children, and Peter becomes a cop, just like his father and just like his neighbor. Unfortunately, the whole thing with like alcoholism and his father, he has the same issue. Okay, so his mother ends up trying to help him, and through all this, the 2 families reconcile. What I really, really enjoyed about this is that it showed how at one time the sins of the father, the sins of the mother really impact the children, and that the children will sometimes come to have the same vices and issues that their parents did. And I feel like that as the story progresses, there becomes more of a hope, more of an idea that that's not necessarily always written in stone, and that people can change. And I think forgiveness is the main thing here to allow people to change. Forgiveness for your parents and what they did to you. Forgiveness to yourself and what you're doing to your family. And that is what breaks this cycle of abuse, violence, and even mental illness. It was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. I read it, most of it, in one day. It was a fantastic book. That was the only novel I read. So, yeah. Okay. That's all that I read this week. I did read some more short fiction in Asimov's. This one is the July and August issue from 2023. I'm halfway done with it. There were some great stories in this, so I'll probably talk about this next week. As far as other books that I want to read this week, there is this children's book called The Sea of Terror from Stuart Gibbs. This is the Once Upon a Time series. This is book number 3. I could probably read this in hardly no time. The mangas that I'm reading, I'm going to be reading A Man and His Cat. I'm going to be reading that during my breaks at work. I have a novella here from T. Kingfisher. The rest of the books are T. Kingfisher. This one is called What Moves the Dead. I'm also going to be reading Nettle and Bone. And then the novella Thornhedge by T. Kingfisher. And that would wrap up all the things that I planned on reading for the month of September. So hopefully I'll be able to do that. I'm also listening to Once Upon a Tome, The Misadventures of a Rare Bookseller by Oliver Darkshire. And it's about a man in London that works at the Southern Rare Bookstore, and he talks about what happened there, and his experience working as a rare bookseller. I find it very interesting. It's very dry English humor, so I do like that. Yep. So those are the things that I plan on reading this week. I am going to Cap Clave in Washington, D.C. on Friday. So I'm going to a science fiction convention on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So I won't be around as much. I probably won't be reading as much either, but hopefully I'll be able to read still some. All right, so my reading stream schedule is going to be very truncated this week. I have to go to the DMV one morning. My schedule's kind of odd this week. So it's going to only be Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday from 8 until 10 at night. And then, of course, I'm going out of town. And then I'll be back for the Sunday wrap-up at the same time, 8:30. That's cool, Landon. If you want to give me your thoughts on Nettle and Bone when you read it, that would be fantastic. So you can do that in the Discord. I think I started a Nettle and Bone channel for the September thing. So you're more than welcome to talk to me about it, and I'll put my thoughts in there as well. Okay. So yeah, that is pretty much it. The things that I've read and the things that I'm planning on reading. Let's go ahead and see what is going on in the world of science fiction magazines. Let's make sure. Let me start this. A window capture. Yep. Okay, this way. Let me move over here. All right, let's see what stories are on Uncanny. I haven't read Uncanny for a few months. So, issue number 54 is the September-October issue, and we have, let's see, a Catherine M. Valente story, excellent, a Grace P. Fong story, fantastic, Sarah Monette, also known as Catherine Addison, Christina 10, which is great because I just read a Christina 10 story, and it was great, and Maria Curtis. I think I've read something from her recently. I've been finding that when an author releases a story, then a bunch of other magazines pick up stories as well. 4 Words Written on My Skin from Jen Reese. All right. 6 Versions of My Brother Found Under the Bridge by Eugenia Trata. Oh, I used to know how to say that. I've read a few stories from them, and they're fantastic. And then Jeanette Ying has a story as well. Very cool. I'm excited for that one. I'm actually, let's see, back issues. 53. I don't think I read 53. This one has an R.S.A. Garcia story. I read a story from them last year that I really liked. A Daniel H. Wilson story, a Jara Chandraskara story. I think they just released a novel recently. Steph Kwiatkowski, Natalia Theodoro. they're fantastic. They're such good writers. C.L. Polk, Livy Tidhar, and then Lee Mandela. So I definitely need to catch up on my Uncanny magazine because those two issues sound like crackers. They sound really good. In October, I want to read some back issues of Nightmare magazine. So let's see what we got here. Here's the September issue. We have a story from Pedro Aniguez and Danya Coyles. I've noticed that with horror fiction, horror short story fiction, that there is a lot of Latin representation. A lot of Latino writers, for sure. An Ashley Deng story. Cool. Let's see here. Back issues. August. I'm just going to go through Nightmare magazine because I want to. A Nuzo Anu story, and Jay Coey story, and Adam Troy Castro. I do like Adam Troy Castro. I find that the column, the H word, is my favorite column of all the short stories. It talks about horror, fiction, and movies and stuff. It's very cool. See, July had a story from Isha Karki and Adam R. Shannon. So they only have really 2 original pieces every month now, which is sad. They used to have more than that. Ozzy M. Gartrell and Neil Osher. Let's see. Keith Rosen and Elena Sokovsky from May. I like that. I like this cover. Gestures are cool. Tasha King and James Tatum from April. March, Christina Ten. See? Yeah. And Win Yi Lee. February, Dominic Dickey and Eric Grove. And then January, we had James Sutter and Catherine Quevedo. So, very cool. I'm looking to catch up on Nightmare Magazine and Dark Magazine during the month of October. Let's check out Dark Magazine. We have in this latest issue, TJ Semfel, Adam Calloway, Brian Kamali Kuwata, and Oshahan Ize Yamau. I've noticed that Dark Magazine has a lot of authors from like the South Pacific, like Malaysia and Philippines, things like that, which is very cool. Let's see, August, we have James Bennett, Neil Williamson, Libby Cudmore, and Clara Madrigano. So there's a couple reprints there. July has 2 reprints. Sam J. Miller new story. All right. A Steve Resnick Tam reprint. Christy D. Meester reprint. And then a Francois Harvey original. June, 2 reprints. Orrin Gray. Angela Slater reprint. Lucas Santana. And then a Ray Cooley reprint. Dark Magazine is very good. If you haven't read Dark Magazine, give it a try. You can read everything online for free. May is Cecilia Rostow, Allison Littlewood, Fernanda Castro. April, Cool. Another Angela Slater reprint from February. All right. An AI Jiang original from January. So I'm definitely going to be trying to catch up on Dark Magazine and catching up on Nightmare Magazine during the month of October, along with a lot of scary reads. Yeah, for sure. Okay, I think this is long enough for today. I hope everyone has a great night. Thanks for joining me, Landon and Robert. If you have any questions, you could put it in the comments below. You can join the Discord. And if anyone ever wants to join me and review something live, let me know. Just ask. And I will talk to everyone later.